Edit audio.
But you want me to be on my knees on a hard floor? No. I'm in my 30s now. I'm not doing that. Who got knees like that anymore?
Hello, and welcome back to the Be Well Sis podcast. I am your host, Dr. Cassandra Dunbar. How has life been treating you? But more importantly, how have you been treating yourself? So this is February, and this month often invites conversations about love and intimacy, but rarely do we talk about sexuality as something that's rooted in safety, agency, and the body's wisdom. In today's episode, we explore sexual healing, power, and pleasure through the trauma-informed lens, not as a performance or pressure, but as presence, a choice, and as a reconnection. My guest, Jayden Aubryn, works at this intersection of mental health, movement, sexuality, and spirituality, supporting people to rebuild trust with their bodies after complex trauma. So this conversation is about learning to listen to your body again and about redefining sensuality and sexuality on your own terms. So as always, thank you so much for joining. I am so glad you're here. Be well, sis. All right. So I am super excited to be speaking with Jayden Aubryn. So let's just hop right into the conversation. As you may know, for this month, we are exploring sexuality, sensuality, and all of the things, especially because February is typically, the month where we talk about love, and of course, Black History Month as well. So this is a perfect intersection. You are a therapist and coach.
Yes, a holistic health coach specifically.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So where do they intersect and where do they differentiate?
Yeah, so you can really think of coaching as being something that helps you focus in on the present and some future-oriented goals. And then therapy can also do that. But in therapy, we also do a lot of emotional processing and past orientation work. So as a therapist, I'm a trauma specialist. So I work a lot on trauma and like childhood stuff, relational trauma. But as a coach, I'm really helping people live their best life right now. So regardless of what happened in the past, you may be experiencing like anxiety, depression, etc. How do you manage that right now? And I do that by looking at all aspects of your life, not just mental health, but physical, sexual, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at like, how are you breathing? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? What's your sexual life like? What's your social life like? All of these things that we're engaging with on an everyday basis, and then making small tweaks and holding my clients accountable so that they can actually like grow towards their goals.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You mentioned the trauma aspect, right? I think most of us, a lot of us have experienced some level of trauma, and especially as Black folk, we've inherited a lot of the traumas that our foremothers and fathers, went through, right? And I feel that our trauma, whether it's our lived or what we are carrying, also can impact like our sexuality, our sensuality, and how we just relate to ourselves. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. And feel free to interrupt me if I get way too nerdy about this.
Please nerd out. Is what we do here.
Great. If we're talking about libido and arousal and attraction, there are a lot of components to it. But one major component is going to be your nervous system, right? When we talk about arousal, we're talking about the arousal of your nervous system. Do you have enough energy to get aroused? And then can you relax in real time while you're aroused to then have the orgasm, right? So we need that flexibility in the nervous system. And so the same nervous system, mostly we're talking about our central nervous system, is what we're talking about with trauma as well, right? We're talking about the vagus nerve and the nervous system activation and cortisol getting released. All of that is the same nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are having nervous system impairments from trauma, then we're probably going to have libido impairments as well. And so learning how to get your nervous system to create energy without feeling like you're in danger. A lot of trauma survivors, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I feel any energy at all. Am I about to go into mania? Am I about to get attacked and feeling anxious? Like they don't know how to feel that energy in their body,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, we need to learn that. And we also need to learn how to relax, which that is something you have to learn. We have to
Yeah.
train our body how to relax in order to live our best sexual lives.
Ooh, learning how to relax is a huge one.
Yes.
We really don't know how. I think, especially if you are of a certain generation, like when I was little, like that was beat out of me. Like, especially being a girl, my parents are Caribbean. So girls are supposed to be working from sun up to sundown, right? If you're not doing schoolwork, you're doing housework, right? So it took me a while to, even in my own house, in my own home, to feel okay just sitting down without feeling the guilt of like, well, I could be doing A, B, C, D, whatever, you know? So for somebody who is learning how to relax, first steps, any tips?
Yeah. Okay. So my favorite tool for this is something called progressive muscle relaxation, where you squeeze a muscle and then relax it. Because when you go to as tense as you possibly can be in your muscles and then relax, you start to feel your full range of motion. Like how tense and how relaxed can you be? Usually, you might be existing somewhere in the middle. But then the goal is to say, oh, now that I found what relaxation actually is, let me work on getting there. And we need that felt sense, that experiential sense before we can really move towards relaxation. I think that's the hardest part
Yeah.
about learning how to relax is you don't know what that feels like.
Yep.
But really anything, if you know something does relax you, can you do it more, right? If that's a bath, if that's a smell, if that's a memory, if that's a song, like whatever it is, how do we incorporate more of that into your life so your body starts to learn that, tension doesn't need to be the default. It's kind of like interval training, but for relaxation.
I like that. I like that analogy. So what I was just thinking about as you were talking was just not knowing if my default is that I am tense, right? And I'm anxious and I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop and things. Of course, I'm not going to know what it feels like to be relaxed. And that just, the light bulb went off for me. One of the other things that I was reading about you is that you are a BDSM like expert. Can I call you an expert?
Well, I don't know if I would say I'm an expert on BDSM in general because
It's
that's a wild
serene.
category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I am an expert on using BDSM to help improve your mental health, heal from trauma, and to improve your relationships.
Okay, so for those who may not know, what is BDSM? What is BDSM?
Yes. So BDSM stands for bondage, dominance and submission, and sadomasochism. So really, it is anything that involves a power exchange. So there's someone who has power and someone who doesn't, a dom and a sub, or a top and a bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that is non-normative. I'm putting this in air quotes, right?
Yeah,
Non-normative. Because what is normative? Well, that really
right.
depends on generations and cultures and all of that. But non-normative stuff that includes a power exchange. And oftentimes we're talking about sexual stuff. It doesn't have to be sexual stuff. It could be someone consensually controlling your finances or telling you what to wear, or things like that. But the classic examples are whips, chains, paddles, that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about it. So as Black folk, right?
Mhm.
Typically, that kind of stuff, like, ooh, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like it would apply for us, like to willfully, consensually bring that into the bedroom. So, in what ways can even just exploring, experimenting with that can open up, like make us more sexually liberated?
Okay, so first off, our ancestors did not go through all that they did so that we could be bruised in the bedroom, right?
Truly,
So
truly.
let's live our best sexual life for them,
Yes.
Uh, let's explore, have some fun. But really, to more specifically answer your question, I think that, this is a really, again, wide range of things that you can do. So maybe you just have trouble connecting with your partner in the bedroom. People with ADHD like might get distracted
Hmm.
and then their minds just start to wander or maybe start to dissociate. You have trauma around sex. Well, having something like a paddle getting hit or maybe hot wax being dripped on you, or sensory deprivation, all of those things can actually bring you back into your body so that you can enjoy the sexual experience more. And if we want to go real on the like other end, super trauma focused, we can use this to heal from generational trauma, right? So part of trauma healing is re-engaging with the traumatic thing and then choosing something different, right? It's when we choose something different that we release the trauma. Trauma is stored, stuck energy in our body. So we stay stuck until we're able to do something different. Okay, our ancestors came over chained up and they weren't able to talk or move in the way that they wanted to. So if we can cultivate a scene, right, that mimics that, where we're chained up, we're restricted, even if you want to get some decorations to make it seem like you're on a boat on a plantation or something, you can do that. Allow that feeling of tension to come up into your body and then do something different. You can choose to say, no, I'm taking this gag off, or I'm taking these chains off. And you know what? I'm going to chain you up, right? It is being able to choose something different. Now, this type of work is really intense. Like trauma releases are really intense. So if you're interested in BDSM for trauma, maybe don't start there, but it's definitely a potential.
So where would be a starting place?
I think starting place is exploring your tolerance to certain BDSM tools and learning your body, right? So much of trauma healing is understanding yourself and building what we call the window of tolerance. Essentially, how much emotion can you feel, and maybe how many different emotions can you feel at once before you lose control, right? And we all know that we're kind of on that tipping point of like, ooh, I'm about to lose my shit, you know? So, okay, once we're there, how do you regulate? When we want to do trauma releases, we're going to feel that intensity. But if we just lose control, we're not able to think clearly, then it's really hard to make an intentional choice, and we might just end up re-traumatizing ourselves. So how much spanking can you handle? How much oxygen deprivation can you handle? How hot of wax can you handle? How long are you able to be in a bondage position? Those types of things. What can your body tolerate? And how can you build different relationships and experiences with those sensations?
I hate to sound like a prude, but if I'm in an uncomfortable position, right? All I'm feeling is the discomfort. At what point does the pleasure and the discomfort like intersect, really? You know what I mean?
Well, that's really up to you.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
For example, I love the discomfort of being hit. Sure, like let's go. But you want me to be on my knees on a hard floor? No. I'm in my 30s now. I'm not doing that. Who got knees like that anymore? So these are all things that need to be negotiated upon, and consent is always the first principle in BDSM. If we're not enthusiastically consenting, understanding all the risks, we ain't doing it, right? But if you want to consent to something, sure. And if you don't, if it's like, this is more displeasure than pleasure, then don't do it.
Yeah. So in the example that you gave earlier, right? So let's just say we're trying to work through some past trauma.
Mhm.
For example, like ancestral trauma, right? So we're in a situation where now we're in the bondage, whatever it is, and then we decide to change it. And now maybe the other person is in bondage or whatever. In my mind, and again, I hate to sound prude, but I'll be honest. In my mind, whenever there is like a BDSM situation, each person, each party says, I'm going to be this and versus this. Now, how do we like change it in the middle? You know what I mean? Like if I said I was going to be the sub and you're the dom, and now I'm just like, hold on, I'm actually flipping it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, for a scene like that example, all of this would have been negotiated ahead of time. So before you do this scene, you've already made a complete roadmap of like, at this point, or when I say these words or do these
Okay.
things, this is when we're going to switch. And then this will be the roles, and this is how, we'll move forward. You'll talk about like safe words and maybe bodily reactions or responses that say like, oh, we actually need to like abandon this scene, red stoplight.
Yeah.
So there's always a negotiation before a scene.
Okay.
But if you're doing something a bit more chill, right, we're just trying to have fun.
Mhm.
Let's say there's two switches. So a switch is someone who feels comfortable being a dom and a sub.
Okay.
And then you got two switches together. It might be fun for them to kind of wrestle for control, right? Or they might agree ahead of time who's going to do what, or it might just be natural, right? Like you just, clock the vibe.
Mhm.
But, some of that tension and not knowing and who's going to come up on top, that can be part of the fun too.
We touched on trauma that wasn't necessarily ours that we've experienced directly, but let's just say somebody's experienced or has experienced sexual trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of libido, are there other ways that this sexual trauma that may have been repressed can show up and impact not only the person's like sex life, but just overall just well-being?
Oh man, yeah. Pretty much anything you can think of, trauma can affect it, right? Because trauma affects our nervous system, which is also our autonomic functioning. So how we breathe, how we sleep, how we digest our food, right? I mean, we just even stay with those three things,
Yeah.
right? Okay, if we have impairments in any of those, then we're going to have impairments. We might have irritable bowel syndrome. We might have jaw tension. Which means then dental issues. The list just goes on and on and on. I think ACEs is a really popular study. Just one,
Yep.
significant traumatic event already increases, physical health disparities. We're not even talking about the mental health struggles, but just like our physical like functioning and capacity. So the TLDR is it affects us in every way. But the bright side of that is that means that pretty much we have an infinite amount of ways to heal, right? Because any way that is affecting us, if we tweak that, then that can be an opportunity for healing.
I love that. I love a silver lining. But going back to consent, so especially for people whose boundaries were violated at a point, right? What does reclaiming their agency look like in practice?
Yeah. So, for context here, I'm also a personal trainer. And so I think a lot about fitness analogies. And I think this is a way that we can conceptualize things most people understand. If you want to be able to run a marathon, the first thing that you have to do is figure out how far you can already run and how exhausting that is for you, right? So if you can only run for 1 minute at a time versus you can run for 1 hour at a time, your training plan is going to look completely different.
True.
Right? So same thing with, consent. What is your ability, capacity to consent to things, and more specifically, not consent to things that you don't want to do, right? Are you able to manage that distress in your body when you need to say no to someone? And if not, what is the barrier? Is it that you dissociate? Is it that you actively are getting anxious and feel like you want to panic? Are you nonverbal? Like there's so many different presentations of what that is. So the first thing is to understand where can you comfortably give and, not give consent? And then where are the areas where you can't comfortably do it? And then how can you not comfortably do it? right? And then from there, we can say, okay, let's start to tweak and practice that. We might take, like, if let's say if what the reason why you can't give consent is that you're really anxious, then we need to talk about regulation tools, right? To calm the nervous system so you learn how to manage your anxiety. Versus like if you dissociate, you need to talk about grounding tools so you can come back into your body and say the thing that you want in a timely manner, or to say, I need time to give you an answer in practicing that response.
I feel like it's really common for women, especially, to kind of like freeze in the moment. I think based off of like the societal programming, right? So if somebody finds themselves freezing in the moment, like what can you do outside of just like later on addressing it?
I mean, so you can learn how to notice that you are going into a freeze state and then move yourself out of a freeze state. So that's completely possible. Because again, there's this gray area when we're starting to get really escalated before our like critical thinking functions of our brain completely shut off. So we want to start noticing in that gray area and then complete interventions there. But also just revoke consent later too, if you need to. And I think a lot of times we have this urgency, right? Internal or external. Capitalism has affected us all that we have to just do stuff all the time. It has to be right away because time is money. Let's go. Give me an answer. Like, even people are just like, you didn't text me back in 24 hours. Okay.
Right.
Are you dead?
Did
Am
you
I
die?
dead? So it's okay if you need to take some time. It's okay if you want to change your answer. And I think some of this work is accepting that and allowing yourself to take the time and change your mind when needed and knowing that you can do that and no one's going to die.
Yeah. Okay. The thing that kind of scares me about that, I'll be honest, is if I'm with someone and I don't know that they're dissociating or they're free, like whatever is happening. And then later on, we have a conversation and they like revoke consent. It's just like, oh my gosh. So now what was my role there?
Yeah. Well, we really need to talk about like accountability, like personal accountability. Everyone is accountable for giving consent and revoking consent. None of us are accountable for trying to guess what other people's consent is.
True.
As a therapist, I'm very, well trained in reading people. But in all that training, we also talk about how often we can get that wrong and how often we put our own biases and judgments in what we're reading for other people. So we think something is happening, we need to ask, right? I don't say in a therapy session, oh, it looks like you're feeling sad. I might say, I noticed that your shoulders just slumped. Can you tell me what you're feeling? Right? We are never accountable for someone else's consent, right?
Yeah.
That is theirs. So if someone is not able to give consent, okay, that's something they need to work on.
Yeah.
And that's a them project. And you then have to decide, okay, this person is kind of iffy on their ability to give consent. What type of relationship do I want with them?
Yeah.
Then? Do I want to be part of their journey? Or am I going to let them figure that out on their own and then come back later?
So true. And I find that sex is a lot of communication. And my husband taught me that. Constantly checking in before, during, after. Like at first I was like, why are you guys all these questions? But now I get it, like constantly check in and just to get feedback for himself, but also for me to like really replay, like, did this work? Did this not work? Like, how are we feeling? And I think communication is so, so important when it comes to life, but also, especially when it comes to sex, that constant back and forth with whoever you're with. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note, there are a lot of different ways to communicate. I love going nonverbal. This neurodivergent brain over here, and I talk for a living. So
right.
There are times where I'm just like, I'm not going to say anything, but I can communicate in other ways through signs, signals, facials, and especially, Black folks, we got our facials on.
Right.
Just want to make sure that other people understand what those signals and gestures mean, but always be thinking creatively and openly about what communication looks like for you so that it's accessible when you are maybe escalated and words might be hard to access.
And this is just make me think that there's a lot of self-work that goes into this. So whenever we think about pleasure and being just fulfilled in life in general, I used to think that, it'll come. Mm-mm. You got to work at it, and it's working at getting to know me really, really intimately, the things that I may have tucked away and whatnot. No, I have to like revisit those things and make it make sense, or get some help making it make sense too.
Yeah, healing is a constant journey of introspection and getting data and tweaking your life. One of the things I offer is a holistic life audit for this very reason of like, how do we look at your whole life and start to, make some tweaks so that you're living your best life? Because it does take work.
Yeah.
It takes an honest assessment and an honest audit. And I don't think we're really taught how to assess ourselves in a compassionate, but also
Mm.
critical and real way. A lot of times people start assessing themselves and then it's like judgment
Yep.
or like, oh, I'm a terrible person or I can't believe I do this. No, okay, it's data,
Yep.
right? What do we want to do with this data?
Yeah. What does compassion and critical look like? How does that marry? Because I either go the like opposite, like either I'm just like beating myself up, or that's actually where I stay. I beat myself up. So how do we like critique with
Mhm.
also? Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is compassionate accountability, because again, we're not really taught this. And I guess the best way I can think to describe it is I'm a dancer,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times, when I'm dance training or I'm preparing for a performance,
Mm-hmm.
I'll record myself dancing, and then I'll look back at it and be like, okay, killed that part, but my lines weren't clean here, or I could be a bit lower here, right? It's kind of this objective observing and saying, okay, this is where I want to be, and here are the steps to get there. And it takes a lot of practice to look at that and be objective and not go, wow, I look awful. I can't believe I trained all these hours and this is still what I look like. That's just a practice. That's cognitive work. Might take some breath. It could lead you down the road to trauma processing of why you're so critical, right? But, in the present moment, it's, oh no, I'm not doing that right now. Let me just figure out what I want to work on going forward, right? And I think when we have something to work towards and a goal to pursue, it can be easier to focus on the objectiveness and the goals than it is than getting stuck in the judgment piece.
Yeah. Healing has become, or maybe the way it's framed and painted, especially like in the social media landscape, is like it's a job, right? And I think sometimes like the healing, the way that it's sold to us is that we need to be constantly self-improving to the point where do we actually enjoy ourselves and do we know ourselves, or are we trying to like become this thing or this ideal?
Mm-hmm. What is your goal in healing? Because healing looks different for everyone. And this is similar to people who like go to the gym, right? What is your goal going to the gym? Is it to gain muscle? Is it to lose weight? Is it to improve your cardiovascular? Is it to do power movements and sprint? Is it flexibility? And depending on what your goal is, how you're going to train for that is different. But if you just don't have a goal and you just start going to the gym because that's what you're supposed to be doing, you're just going to go around to a whole bunch of machines in a nonsensical order, and you're not going to make any real improvements. You're not going to feel super satisfied or motivated, and you're probably going to drop off pretty soon. And I see this a lot. People are always like, oh, I'm so bad at being consistent. I never pursue any of my goals. And I usually am like, no, I don't think you're bad at pursuing your goals. I just think you're maybe not clear on your goals, or your goals are a big should from society and not actually what you want. So let's get clear on what you want and just focus on that. And with a little guidance, usually most people can meet their goals.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's so good. I want to talk a little bit about, we talked about like sexuality a little bit and sensuality. How do you help people reconnect with a sensation in everyday life? So even outside of the bedroom, how can we just reconnect with ourselves?
Yeah, so this is one of those things where there's an infinite amount of ways to do it. What makes you feel connected to yourself? What are the things that you like? That could be listening to music. And can you, if let's just say we're trying to be connected to our physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, if you're listening to music, can you feel the music in your body? Where do you feel the bass? Do you want to move a different part of your body to the bass versus the violin? When you're cooking or eating, how can you really savor the experience of smell and taste and feel the food go down your throat and then down into your stomach? How can you notice when a door handle is cold or when your shower is hot, right? Really anything can be an opportunity of mindfulness and bodily connection. It's just what do you want to do? A lot of people think, oh, if I need to connect to my body, I need to breathe. Breathing is great. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But, that's not always the best starting point for people to focus on, right? Even if you want to work on your breathing, maybe you enjoy singing. You know what you got to do to sing? You got to breathe.
Breathe. Mm-hmm.
You want to breathe while you're exercising or playing an instrument or saying mantras, right? There's so many different ways to connect to your body, but it's really about doing the thing that you love and then being intentional about feeling connected to yourself as you're already doing that.
Yeah. Ooh. How do you help clients define a sexuality on their own terms? Speaking of not listening to what society has said, instead of inheriting scripts that don't fit their bodies or their values.
Yeah. So my general method is going to be fuck around and find out.
Okay.
On the literal and metaphorical sense there. But, with informed consent, we really need to know all the options to be able to give informed consent. So that means we need to consider all of the options. So sometimes, let's say for, sexual awareness and sexual exploration, people are like, I don't know what I like or what feels good or what I want to try. I will pull up a list of a whole bunch of different sexual activities and we're going to go through it and like, what things feel exciting in your body? And what things are like, oh my God, actually, absolutely not. Never, never, never. And then maybe we can even explore why. Why does this one feel exciting? And why does this one feel like absolutely never? Right? Because sometimes we might want to work on that absolutely never. Because that might be part of the work to say like, oh, you know what? I can try and be a bit more flexible here or work through whatever trauma gave me that forceful reaction. Or sometimes it's just a great opportunity to practice saying no. But we're just exploring new things. And as soon as a client's like, okay, cool, I like this thing, I'm like, great, note it. And let's try something completely different and see how they experience that. And, with all that back and forth and experimentation, you start to figure out, okay, these are the things that I like on a regular basis. These are the things I like every now and then. And, I really gave this other one an honest try. I wanted to like it. It's just not for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay too. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Jayden, you are incredible. So where can the people find you online and possibly work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in therapy services, or maybe you are a mental health professional and you want to learn how to use movement or BDSM or anything like that, you want to learn how to use it for healing purposes, you can go to TISE, TISE, Consulting and Therapy. TISE stands for Trauma Informed Social Equity. So TISEconsultingandtherapy.com. There's also my handle on Instagram is at TISE Consulting and Therapy. Also, I have a certification program if you want to become a coach that uses all these things. You can also check that out at TISE. And then if you're more interested in personal training or holistic health coaching or my holistic life audits, you can go to chaotichealing.org. And I also have an Instagram at chaotic_healers and a podcast, Chaotic Healing with Jayden Aubryn.
Awesome. So I will link all those down below in the show notes. That way you can go ahead and click, go follow, go listen to the podcast, all of the things. Go connect with Jayden. I have a side question. What does the holistic life audit entail?
Yeah, so we look at up to 8 domains of your life. So it's sleep, breath, movement, nutrition, relationship to self, sexual well-being, social life, and spiritual health. We do a little consult. I see what your goals are, what's going on. You fill out some forms. You give me some information, like within all of those domains of your life. And then I create a plan for you, right? And it can be 3, 6, or 9 months. And the plan is like, okay, try these 1 or 2 things. If you don't like it, here's like a modification or a variation. But like, I know that you are busy and you're driving around all the time because we've talked about this. So I might give you more, skills to using your car or something like that. But yeah, small tweaks that you can do throughout your life. And then after, a couple of weeks, we'll add in another one because if you try to change your whole life all at once, it's not going to be super successful. And we'll just do that, over the course of the package that you have purchased. And yeah, and then I create the whole thing. We meet together and we go over it together. So if you're like, oh no, I absolutely am not going to do that, or this needs an adaptation, I'll go ahead, take that feedback, and then I'll send you over the revised plan afterwards.
Nice. Very interesting. Thank you. Shoot, I feel like I might need some holistic life coaching. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And I will have everything linked down below in the show notes. So guys, go ahead and go get your life with Jayden.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Well Sis. If you'd like to get in touch with us, there's a link in the show notes. Be Well Sis is hosted by me, Dr. Cassandra Dunbar, and produced by Edit Audio. Don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. Until next time, be well, sis.
I'm no designer, but I know my brand inside and out, and I know a generic-looking website when I see one. Wix Harmony has blown me away. It's a website builder that lets me switch back and forth between using AI and hands-on editing tools, so I can create a website exactly the way I pictured it. I even get a personal AI agent that's an expert in web design and helps me out. Try it out for free at wix.com/harmony. That's wix.com/harmony.